The World Cup has this ability, though, to bring people together, and you touched on it in your first answer about the idea of people from all over the world buying into it because your country's being represented at a sport that we have all had a go at. We know what it's about. It's different from half of the sports in the Olympics. You're rooting your nation on just because they're your nation.
Yeah.
Whereas here, you understand the way your nation plays football, and it's kind of, can the way we play beat the way you play, despite what might be inequalities in so many different ways. And I do wonder how different the game is itself in a World Cup. Tournament football is different from domestic league football. First of all, you don't in domestic league you're going to get a second chance to have a go at them later on in the season. In tournament football, once you get to the knockout stage, that's it. It's just like FA Cup finals, FA Cup finals, FA Cup. In which other ways would you define the way that football is played in World Cups against maybe the way it's played elsewhere? For example, the pressure that you mentioned the players are under, especially the England players, they have to play. We want to see them not playing defensive. And that happened in last World Cup. You might remember when they started going defensive. Or was it in the Euros? People started going absolutely bananas and saying, why aren't you playing much more front? It was the Euros, forgive me. Are there particular ways that you've identified that the football in a World Cup is played?
Yeah, so what you say about national styles was very strong until about 2000. So the Dutch, the Italians, the Brazilians, the English, they all had their own style. And that was part of what you felt watching, that both the strengths and weaknesses of my country, Brazil or England, are being exhibited on the field in a way that goes beyond football. So with England, it's the warrior mentality, but also kind of lack of European sophistication. That's what people felt. And so the way the team plays is the way your country is. And now I think that's very largely gone. So England, Italy, Holland, I mean, how's to tell them apart? They all look quite similar. Spain look more like Holland than Holland do. Germany are more like Holland, but they always lose now. So those national styles have melted together, and Brazil was always sort of trying to hang on to something that I think was partly an idea of the past, and it hasn't worked. So Brazil missed the boat of modern football. And so you have to play this international style of massively fast passing, collective, everybody defends, everybody attacks, and it's all the same. The thing that's disappeared from World Cups. The things that are different are the drama, as you say, is just incommensurate. There's nothing in club football that will mean as much. It's not just you're playing a series of finals. This is for most players the most important tournament of their lives. I mean, less so, if you're playing for Liverpool and England, Real Madrid and Spain. But most of the guys, they play for countries like Ecuador, Japan, or Ireland. This is by far the biggest thing that they're going to tell their grandchildren about. So it means just so much. And the last thing I'll say is that the quality is now worse than good club football. So until about 2000, the best World Cup matches were the best matches in football. And in the 70s, when you saw new players, the 70s and 80s, would play like the Brazilian Josimar, who you may never have heard of, and suddenly saw this great player. That's all gone. So now with 32 teams, most teams are worse than Everton or Fulham. With 48 teams, next year, that's going to be even more extreme. You're going to get teams in the World Cup that couldn't play in the English Championship. So it's not about the quality anymore. It's about the drama.
Josimar actually married my wife's cousin.
Congratulations. That's very
no, there are no congratulations in order there. That was an absolute disaster, a disastrous decision. He wasn't built for the success that he so fleetingly enjoyed. The point about, because on football isn't folk dance, is it? There is a result at the end. You can prove that style A is better and more effective than style B. And so that alone, let alone the movement of players around the world, that leads to a kind of movement towards a loss of individual styles. But even like the great Colombia side of the late 80s and early 90s, That Valderrama side, such a stereotypically South American side. It's full of Holland 74. So you've always got this crisscross of ideas. It's always happened. The one thing I think that makes me love the World Cup even more these days, perhaps, you can never love it in the way that you do when you're 9. Your first one, you can't. But just the fact that you can't buy players. You can't. There's no transfer window, because watching from the other side of the Atlantic, the sense of entitlement of English fans these days that their clubs should be able to should be buying the best the best players in the world, and there's something wrong if that's not the case. I find that sense of entitlement a little bit off-putting, and the fact that with the national teams, sorry, you can't have Moses Caicedo. He's from Ecuador, and football is a low-scoring game. So if you get 11, 15 Ecuadorians together, this is a country that didn't make the World Cup till 2002. I was there the first time they qualified. What a party that was, and it was like them saying to the world, "Hey, we exist." Well, now maybe they can think not only, "Hey, we exist," but "Hey, we might be able to give these big sides a shout." So you get a different dynamic from club football, where you get more and more and more concentration. In the international game, you get a little bit less. Is that fair?
Yes, but it's still the Western European teams that dominate. So if you look at the teams that made the podium since 2006, I think that's 5 World Cups. It's all Western Europeans plus Croatia, which is next to Western Europe, plus Messi's Argentina. Nobody else. So the 180 countries in the world that are not in Western Europe, they have one team that can compete with the best Western Europeans, Messi's Argentina. And so even quite small European countries like Belgium, Croatia, Portugal, Holland are better than, even Iceland is probably better at times than China, India, or the US. So that success of Europe, or that domination of Europe that you're talking about, to some degree is replicated in World Cups. And even the successful teams from outside Europe, like Morocco.
Yeah, it's based on Europe, players formed in Europe, isn't it? Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I've been a romantic fool yet again. I shall chastise myself.